Hey, good evening. If we could just ask the few people in the back to come and find a seat. I'm not sure what the local fire code is, but I'm pretty sure we don't want people standing in the aisles. And like church, there's still seats up front. I was Catholic clergy for about 12 years, so we never had people up front, and as Catholics, we never had anybody who could sing well. So it's just. I just want to welcome you all tonight, and first off say thank you. We waited past the time we were supposed to start because there were so many people coming in. I just wanted to be respectful of everybody and their time. My name's Chris Riley. I'm president of Lexington Partners, and I just want to start off with a couple of sort of housekeeping things. This is not an official town meeting. This is our opportunity as the developers and owners of Westbrook outlets to have an exchange here with you, tell you where we're at with things, and to hear your concerns as a community. So it's not an official meeting. The official meetings we'll talk about at the end of this presentation because there's plenty of time for input and things of that nature. But I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and it's always best to hear from the people in the community that you're about to really come in and make some changes to, so that we can do it in a way that's respectful and in a way that works for everyone. So this is being recorded in multiple ways. There's cable channel access in the back. There's channel 3 is here, and this will be posted on town site as well for anybody who wasn't able to make it here tonight. And we will make sure that the presentation you're about to see also gets posted to the town site. So if we can just briefly go over what we're going to talk about. We're going to introduce everybody on the project team and key stakeholders. Talk a little bit about the project history, where it is and how it got to where it is. A reimagining of Flat Rock Place into a residential community, as you've all probably seen online. Where the design inspirations have come from to date. Sustainability and environmental considerations. Economic and community impact. Our next steps and the timeline that's involved with the project. Closing remarks, and then we will leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. I'm going to just pause for 1 second. Ben, is there any way we can get somebody to turn the AC up? Because it's going to get real warm in here, it feels like. So if we could, this is our team. My colleague and partner, Eric Fazlo, is here from representing ownership, along with Greg Hayden. Again, I'm Chris Riley. I'm the president of Lexington Partners. We're a Connecticut-based developer, mostly of multifamily housing, very active along the shore and up in Hartford County. We have our architects here, JCJ. They're going to go through their credentials. We didn't choose to bring the hydrologists and all that because after having worked with them for 2 years, and at 7 o'clock at night, if we heard from them, we'd all be asleep in about 10 minutes. They're really good at what they do, but they are engineering nerds, and there's plenty of time to go through that stuff later. So we did bring Don Poland with Goldman and York, who does a lot of work through the state of Connecticut, particularly for towns themselves, to do economic impact and impact on school systems and things of that nature. So you'll get a lot of meat in his part of the presentation for things that we've seen, concerns on social media and things of that nature. The woman that you met coming in out at the table who provided some water, and I think the cookies are all gone, was Mary Corsi. She does our community relations. And then on our team, but not here tonight, she had other commitments, is Maria DeMarco, longtime colleague of the firm, who runs an affordable housing company, and she's going to advise us as to how best to execute on affordable housing in the project. So with that, I would like to ask Eric to come up and just sort of give you the sense of the current ownership.
It's so quiet. I hope it's going to stay like this. Quiet and easy. So it's just the beginning. I'm Eric Fazio. You have noticed I have an accent. So some of you might wonder what this guy is doing here. I'm representing ownership of Westbrook Outlet. My company is an European company, but has been doing business in US for 20 years. So we are not here by luck or opportunity. We decided to be here. We decided to buy and manage Westbrook Center. I will not give you figures about the company. There are two, Innovalis and Osh. You might go to the web to see who we are. You're going to be impressed by a lot of things. It's going to be, big. It's going to look like it's a big company, but I'm here to tell you that in fact we are big, but we are small. We are small because we are a family business. I have been with the company for 20 years. I'm working with my friends. We saw our children grow together, and this is what we are. So you need to be careful when you look at the website, because you're going to see a huge international company, but in fact, it's managed by a group of people that like to work together, like to be together. And there is a reason for that. It's because we are getting involved in projects that we are proud of. So we are very selective. We don't do that many. We are not Goldman Sachs. But we do projects in different countries to be multicultural. So we are in 6 countries, including US. And it helped me to improve my English, to travel that much, I would say. I have been involved with Westbrook Center now for 7 years, at a personal level, because I took it personally. Some people of the city knows me since the beginning. It was in '97. I know that this is not the part. Chris, that's right, so I have to stop there. I'm good? So I will come back later and will tell you a little bit of a story of Westbrook Center.
Hello everyone, I'm Patrick Kenny. I'm the VP of Development for Lexington Partners. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our company. We were founded in 1994, but since the early 2000s, we've been primarily focused on multifamily residential housing. And we build and manage and own our own properties. Lexington is an owner of a construction company called Innocom Construction. That's a huge asset to our development arm as a GC. We have experience in all types of developments, from ground up projects to buildings that we demo and then start with a blank canvas, such as this development, to adaptive reuse of old buildings, historic buildings. We've done all types of developments. So this one's called the Tannery. It's in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And I'm just going to show you a couple of these properties. This one has 250 apartments throughout 6 buildings on 30 acres of land. It also contains the popular restaurant called the Beam House. It's a mix of modern buildings, but on the main street is an old building that was actually a tannery, and that contains the restaurant and a lot of the amenities. And that particular project was finished in 2017. The next one is the Borden. This is in Wethersfield, Connecticut. This was completed in 2020. So what we did here is we demolished a long vacant building on the Celestine Highway. That's the building you see in white and orange, and that has 111 apartments. And then the small building, that was a bank building that we rehabilitated into 39 smaller apartments. So on that project, there's a total of 150 apartments. There's also some commercial here. There's a large restaurant space. There's a real estate brokerage office, dental practice. And this one opened in June of 2020, right when everything was shut down, and it leased up very quickly regardless. This is called Windsor Station. This is a transit-oriented development. It's It was completed in 2017. It's 130 apartment units in 2 buildings, and it's right across from the Amtrak train station in downtown Windsor. It has a 2-level fitness area, dog park, and some walking trails. And this one is called One Park Apartments, and it's in West Hartford. It was built out of a convent in the Sister St. Joseph's, and we converted the convent building into 92 apartments, and then built a new building behind it for 200 apartments. So there's 292 apartments there. This just opened last September, and is currently making great progress in the leasing. All of our projects are heavily amenitized to give a great quality of life and recreational options for our residents. But One Park is probably even a step up from all the other ones. It has a lot of unique amenities in a unique place, which is an old chapel building. So that makes that project special. So we have other projects, and we own, for example, we own Saybrook Station, which is not far from Westbrook, which is 186 apartments. We're active in downtown Hartford, mostly multifamily, as I mentioned before. We are finishing a boutique hotel in Litchfield, and doing some other work in Middlesex County and Hartford County. I'm going to pass it now to Eric to come back up and tell us a little bit about the current status of the property.
Nice to meet you again. I'm back. History of Westbrook Center. It started well, and it's not ending yet because we are creating a new future, but we bought it in '97. At that time, for some of you that read business newspaper about retail, it was not a great year, and I would say it went worse. From 97 to, let's say, not 97, 2017. So for 4 years, I think we were pretty good at maintaining occupancy. Due to the fact, certainly, that we had an approach that it was more experience-oriented. Before, the center was owned by Tanger. Pretty sure that there is some shoppers in the room. I hope so. Huh? When I see all these people. So we try to bring more alive, more experience, restaurant, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. Skating ring, the things that we also brought to this project to allow families to come with kids. All this experience that the center didn't have with Tanger, which was very, in their box, very process about the management of their shopping centers. Just before COVID, we were, I would say, roughly at 85% occupancy, which was pretty good for an outlet center, working pretty well. We had planned some other improvement, especially for the movie theater that needed refresh seats and rooms. And then, like everybody, we experienced COVID. And we went from something that was, I would say, manageable and increasing in quality to a complete disaster. Unfortunately, this type of malls, when you own them, you rely on national tenant policy or politics or strategy. Let's put it strategy. And there is nothing that you can do about it. You can try to negotiate, it doesn't work. When a national tenant, Old Navy, H&M, which we have still in the project, but I named them. I had other decide to leave, to close, they close. They walk away from one day to another. And we experience that for, let's say, 1 year, 2 years after COVID. Some of you, if you go to the center, have noticed that along the years. But we are not people, I was talking about my company, we are not people that give up. That's not who we are. This is not our own DNA. I never give up on a project. Never wanted. It never happened. I have 30 years of real estate, never happened. So we created a more connection with local businesses with the help of general manager, Charlie, who is here. Charlie, you can show your face to the people, please. Because she has been with me since 3 years, struggling with the challenging to keep this space alive, to minimize the dark space. Economically, it doesn't work. Everybody has a sense of business, your personal business, the way you handle your home, your mortgage. I'm pretty sure that some people say, how they are still alive, these guys. We are still alive because we invested in the future. We wanted to be able to stand and to stay alive in a manner that is that we can be proud of. Like if you go to Westbrook right now, you will see that the landscape is perfect. It's clean. You have a turnover of pop-up store, local businesses. You have a market. We still have, some festivals. We are putting a lot of energy, a lot of money to keeping it alive. But it's short term, until we found a new path. And the new path is to say, is it the future for this location to keep it as a mall? Is it? Even if we try to make effort, reinvestment, renovation, extension, you name it, I've done that many times. But is it the right place? Is it going to work? Is it the right place? And what does it bring to the community? Because you might believe it or not, some people that are doing business in real estate, the community matters. Because if it doesn't serve a purpose, it will not work. It's as simple as that. And this is when we said, okay, are we going to do that ourselves? No, we can't. Because we need somebody local, experienced, the right knowledge, and also that has a family DNA. This is when we met with the people of Lexington 2 years ago. And we started to work on this project. You have to understand that what you're going to see is not coming from, I would say, 6 months' work. No, it does not. It comes from 2 years' work. 2 years. With a full team of people, hard workers that wanted to do something that is going to be a change. That we like, first, as a personal level, because we can do many things on this site. To do business, to make money. There's plenty of options. But we have chosen the options that we think is going to make a change for good in this community. Now, there are certainly some people, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to convince everybody here of this, but you have a picture of a center that is dying, and it's hard to say that, because in business you always want to be successful. It's dying, it's not going to have a future, and I prefer that we do something together, that I am involved, because I have been involved in this challenging time with this center for 7 years. And I want to participate, I want to be involved in a new era. And this is, this is what you're going to see. A long work, hard work with professionals, local, family people. I'm not too long? A little bit. Okay. I am coming back or not?
It's funny, I'm originally English, right? So I was born there, I carry 2 passports. So for an Englishman to be working with a bunch of Frenchmen, it's different, right? And you have to get used to the culture a little bit, although I spent quite a bit of time in France, and I love the way they think. And when he says family, the firm that I'm now president of is very much a family company here and very deep roots in the state. My partner Marty, who brought me into the firm 7 years ago, is Pat's father. He passed away last year, and a lot of the vision that came into this was what Marty had done in the history of all of his work here in the state for almost the last 40 years. So we are, both of his sons are in the firm, and I just as an aside, my commitment is to Marty, which I hold pretty sacredly, is to give him another 10 years so that the boys are ready to take over and do what we do going forward. So as Eric said, the vision here is as a result of 2 years of work. We've tried lots of different variations of things on site, and really the creation of a vibrant mixed-use community that balances multifamily with for sale and retail that supports the residents of the development and the surrounding community. Now, the scale of this isn't simply because we want to go big. The scale of this is required partially because of the investment that we need to make in order to deal with the sewer on site. One of the challenges on the shore, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the septic here. So in order to do any kind of development on this site, you've got to deal with that, and you're very limited by what you can do. So either you get to a certain scale, or you have to go very small. And very small doesn't work. It's too big a site to try and do something small. So there is a little bit of shock when you first see what we're proposing in terms of the scale, but we've done projects this big. I've worked for very large companies that have done projects much bigger than this, and we think it's going to make the right balance here. We will be driven by being environmentally responsible. We will, the project, as you can see from the sheets that you picked up outside, are going to provide new tax revenues to the town. The estimates on those sheets are on the low side. That's just the real estate taxes. That is not any of the personal property tax, the car taxes, things of that nature. So that would come on top of the numbers that you see on your sheets. There is a massive need on the South Shore for additional hotel space. So that's part of the reason for proposing the hotel as part of this. And that we, as you can see from our previous developments, are very much about amenities. Because for a project to be successful these days, I don't know if you have college-age kids, but what they live in now versus what I lived in then, it's very different. So people's expectations are very high when it comes to living standards, and amenities. Amenities are a huge part of that. So we're proposing 595 apartments, 76,000 square feet of retail, which is mostly restaurant and entertainment. We're trying to figure out how to keep a version of the theater in there, because we've heard that over and over and over again. So again, we're trying to be responsive to what we're hearing people say. A hotel that has 100 guest rooms and 100 townhome condominiums for sale. So that is what we are proposing. I'm going to ask Peter from JCJ to come up and talk about how, and Christine, how we are going about the design of all of that.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Peter Stevens. I'm the president of JCJ Architecture. We're just approaching our 90th year, headquartered up in Hartford. You may know us from Jeter, Cook, and Jepson. And I was telling First Selectman Hall, this is a nostalgic night for me, because I believe right around 1991 or 92 when I first returned home to Connecticut with JCJ. I was up on this very stage presenting to the town one of the designs for your senior housing project. So good to be back. JCJ has been involved with residential projects in Connecticut over the last 30 years. First with planned communities. One is River Highlands, which is better known as the home of Travelers Championship, but others in Glastonbury, Somers, Enfield, and around Connecticut. And since then, we've expanded. We have offices, 6 offices across the country, coast to coast. And what Chris described, there's a trend, or a change in trend in residential. It's gone, and I think part of it is the pandemic that created it, but there's much more emphasis on not only living, but also the work and play aspect of mixed-use development. And I think what you'll see Christine present to you and show you is that that is what this project embodies. All 3 of those elements that can be extremely exciting for the town, and you'll see the uses that you can see. So there's 3 slides of projects. I'm not going to go through any of them, but what I would like to convey to you that the architecture that you see is one that is, we don't have a style. Our style is the community. And what the community, we need to understand the community's aesthetics. You're a seaside community. We do a ton of work on the shoreline here. And so that would be very respectful going forward. And as Chris mentioned, the amenities, that is a huge change in the market recently. But it's amenities that we've talked together about how that can be shared, not only with the residences, but potentially with the residents on the site, but also residents in town. And you'll see how that may evolve as well. And as Christine walks through, you'll see some neighborhoods within neighborhoods. It's an opportunity to create places that people can socialize and gather, but it's also places where people can walk, be well, and also rest aside and contemplate and relax a little bit. And then finally, because Chris mentioned it wholeheartedly, and it's a huge part of our business, we've probably done 100 hotels in the last 10 years. There is a thirst for this area along the shoreline for additional hotel keys, which is important for this development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine. She's going to be our lead designer on this, and she has worked with Chris and others for that better 2 years, and she's going to walk you through that plan. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. Super excited to be here tonight to share our design approach and how we approach the master plan design for this multi-use project. The site of the multifamily housing development is bordered by I-95 to the north, which positions itself well for residents who have easy access to get on and off the highway. The southern edge of the property is defined by railroad tracks. So this sets up a very linear site and an opportunity for us as designers to produce a linear element that can be used as an organizing feature for the development. And it fulfills our team's desire to create a main street and a village-like experience for all of the users. A sense of arrival. Patrick, I don't know if you can point out the traffic circle. So a sense of arrival when approaching the site from the west begins at the traffic circle. Thoughtful landscaping, signage, integrated lighting are all visual cues that tell the visitor that they've arrived. From this vantage point, the visitors can view the Great Lawn and an all-season water feature. Next slide. The team envisions that this water feature will provide on-site outdoor recreational opportunities for swimming, sunbathing, leisurely walks, and ice skating in the wintertime. Most importantly, it becomes a focal point for the community, for gatherings and social events, and it becomes a place where people can find their identity and a sense of community. Next slide. So residential building A, which is on the top left, serves as a backdrop for this feature. At the ground floor level of that building, the team envisions that food and beverage venues will be located and will open out onto a plaza that will have outdoor seating. People can sit there and overlook this beautiful landscaped great lawn and the water feature. There can be intimate seating areas, fire pits, places to gather, places for the community to come together as a whole to have larger events. And the residents whose apartments happen to overlook this feature can really enjoy almost like a resort-like experience. So from this circle, this traffic circle, residents can also continue to the North Road, which brings them to the residential buildings to the north. There's a higher density of apartments there. Or continue along Main Street to the next traffic circle, which will bring them to the south, where the townhouses are located. There are 100 townhouses which have been grouped together to create a neighborhood. An effort has been made to isolate these townhouses from any through traffic, making it more quiet and special. The addition of this housing type provides another option of living for the residents, and it complements the studio 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units that are found in the mid-rise apartment buildings. From the traffic circle, the procession to Main Street is identified by a linear, tree-lined landscape feature that runs down the entire length of the boulevard. The scale of the landscaping is meant to create a more intimate and residential feeling for the residents that live there and the pedestrians on the street. Street parking along Main Street will provide convenient access to shops and restaurants, cafes, and bars located at the ground level of the apartment buildings. Amenities for the residents such as community rooms, lobbies, and fitness centers will also be located at this level. And the hope is that these functions will encourage visitors to the site and residents to engage and interact and create an energy for the development. A specialty restaurant punctuates the east end of the Main Street, and patrons can dine while they overlook all the activity and action happening on the boulevard. This eastern traffic circle also brings vehicles to a retail building located in the south, or they can travel north to the hotel that Chris was referring to, which will have approximately 100 guest room keys. So, next slide, I guess. So, we see this development as having a lot of potential. We've really just scratched the surface tonight and running you through some of the ideas that we have. But we see that we have this opportunity to bring people together of all ages and to live, work, and play, and also for the greater Westbrook area to come and visit and engage with this community. So, thank you.
So I'm going to briefly touch on some of the sustainability and environmental considerations that we're going to be making with this project. There'll be energy efficient HVAC units, which we are doing in every new project that we have. There'll be a good amount of car charging stations. We will have water use solutions. Obviously, there's going to be a large wastewater treatment plant to give us the capacity of water that we need and to make sure it discharges properly, which will be under a lot of scrutiny with DEEP and a lot of oversight there. We have commissioned a traffic study, which will take place once everything as far as the plans are finalized, and there will be a reduction in overall traffic from the time when the outlets were filled. There will be some sound attenuation considerations made because we're near the highway and also the train tracks. We'll be using sustainable building materials, and as you could see from the difference of the site plan we just showed to the first area that we showed, there's just going to be a lot more green space as opposed to asphalt. I'm going to turn it over to Chris now to talk about one of the programs that we're going to try to implement here.
So as I mentioned earlier, one of the members on the team is Maria DeMarco. She's going to help us work with the town on the affordability component. But in addition to some affordability, we're going to implement what we call Hometown Heroes, which is a program to provide incentives for people who are firefighters, first responders, policemen, teachers, community people that you want living in the community, that we find a way to target some of the apartments directly to them. Because the affordable programs, as they're designed, don't necessarily serve those folks, but we have a program as Lexington that will attract and help Hometown Heroes live in this community. I'm going to turn it over to Don now to give you the impact analysis.
Good evening, Don Poland with Gilman York Property Advisors. Going back to Patrick's early presentation on various projects that Lexington's done, the first time I worked with Lexington was actually on the project that was called the Borden, and I was retained by Lexington to help them with securing their local approvals, doing a similar impact analysis as here. The One Park development in West Hartford I also worked on, but in that one I was actually retained by the town of West Hartford to represent the town in their interests in working through the development process with Lexington. The reason why I say that is I work for both municipalities and developers, and my analysis that I'm going to present tonight would be the same regardless of who my client is. Read a book a couple years ago. I forgot the name of the book, but I remember the first sentence. It said, 2/3 of all things can be explained by demographics. So to get to the fiscal impacts, we have to start with demographics. A lot of numbers here, but I'll explain them to you. From 2010 to 2020, Connecticut's population increased by only 1%. Middlesex County decreased by 1%, and Westbrook's population decreased by 2%. During that same time, though, the underage population in Connecticut decreased by 10%, in Middlesex County by 19%, and in Westbrook by 30%. Most people don't think about demographics, but in the world of demographics, when we see declines in young persons, we get concerned. It signals a population that has kind of some issues, which I'll get to. And demographics have outcomes, other outcomes. So if we look at school district enrollments from 2008 to 2021, this data comes from a study I did for the RiverCog Regional Planning Agency. Connecticut's enrollment statewide decreased by 10.8%. RiverCog's region decreased by 21.4%. Westbrook, over that same period of time, your enrollments decreased by 34%. And if I do the time period from 2007 to 2023, then your enrollments, Westbrook's, have declined by 40.4%. You've lost 40% of your school enrollments, and you've lost 30% of your population under the age of 18. Why is that happening? The last set of demographics here. The United States median age is 38.1. Connecticut is 41.1. The RiverCog region is 46.7, and Westbrook is 55. You're not the oldest in the state. I've seen higher. I've actually seen higher. You don't want to look at Litchfield. But if you also just kind of take a look around the room, you should also know that my demographics capture the population pretty well. Next slide. So this slide shows us a population pyramid, and I'm going to step away for a second, but The first pyramid is 2010. The middle pyramid's 2024 current, and then a projection to 2029. In 2010, note that indentation. That's a contraction in your 20 to 40 something year olds. Skip ahead 10 years to 2020. Why have you lost, or 2024, why have you lost so many young persons under the age of 18? Because you were previously losing a population that's of the age that actually has children. It's that loss in that population, the 20s and 30s and early 40-something year olds, that resulted in declining enrollments. And then, if you know this, the pyramids become top-heavy. A proper pyramid goes this way. Your pyramid is going this way, right? And that's a baby boomer population and older at the top of it. In demographics, next slide, we call this population implosion. It's that a population has reached a point that's producing so few children it can't replace itself without outside forces, like in-migration to the community. So you're aging, you're losing young persons and young households. Your housing stock, though, is actually 87% single family, 80% owner occupied, and mostly 3+ bedrooms. It's designed for children. It's designed for 1960s America and households of that era. We used to build a lot of housing in Connecticut back in the 80s. That's what this graphic on the left-hand side is, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. We used to have a lot of children back in those days. I remember growing up in the neighborhood where families had 6 and 7 kids. We were the oddball, our house, with only 2 children. But today, that's not the case. The table on the bottom right-hand side shows that statewide in Connecticut, 30% of households are single person. An additional 33.6% are 2 persons. Think about that. Over a third, almost a third, 64% of households are either 1 or 2 persons. When you look at renter households, 45.2% statewide are single persons. So housing structure has changed. Next slide. Demographics have changed. This is not the 1970s and the Brady Bunch with 6 children. Households are much smaller. So I took a look at some of your housing data and some of your enrollment data. Since 2007, you've added 181 new housing units to the community. And during that same period of time, you lost 388 school district enrollments. That one statement alone should disprove the idea that new housing is what drives school enrollments. Your budget, I know budgets are sensitive topics, but your budget in 2007 was just shy of $13 million, the Board of Ed budget. Today, it's 18 million, just shy of 19 million. If you actually adjust for inflation, it's identical. Your Board of Ed has approved budgets that kept pace with inflation. Housing's not the primary driver of school enrollments or education budgets, new housing. Demographics drive enrollments, and inflation drives education costs. The frightening thing with your school budget is if you do the per pupil expenditures. Per pupil expenditures back in 2007 were just shy of 13,000. Today, they're just over 31,000. More than 2 times the rate of increase on the budget overall. So you ask the question, why? It's because you lost 388 students. That loss of students is being capitalized into the fixed overhead costs, administration, facilities, utilities. Those things don't change with enrollments. So actually the operation of the school system has become very inefficient. And so I did one other calculation. If today your enrollments were still what they were in 2007, your per pupil expenditures would be only 19,000. and they match the rate of inflation once again. So it's that loss of enrollments that has inflated the per pupil expenditures. Next slide. So I did some calculations on projections for enrollments out of this development. The total number of units has been a moving target as the development evolves and so forth. So some of my unit numbers don't match with other numbers in this presentation tonight. But it's the mix of units, the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms that have stayed constant as this has evolved. And that creates a proportionate relationship in my numbers. The proportions aren't changing. So even though my numbers might be slightly different, they're still telling us a similar story. Essentially, I've been doing this work for about 15 years now. I evaluate population projections, housing projections, and school enrollments across municipalities. And then I evaluate how they're trending and fiscal impacts related to them. So if there were to be, my numbers are around 600 units on this site. If there were to be 600 units on this site, the total enrollments would be 122. That's far less than the 388 you've already lost, right? But we also account for new to district. The fact is every enrollment from a new development isn't new to the school district. People have moved within the district. Our consecutive research year over year for about 8 years now has shown that number usually runs around 30%. I estimate at 50% just to be safe. And therefore, this development would generate about 63 new to district enrollments. We then do, next slide. If I asked any of you, how much does a new enrollment to your school district cost? You would tell me the per pupil expenditure, $31,000. And that's not right, unfortunately, because that's just dividing the total budget, which includes everything. But you don't build a new school when you add 1 new student, right? You don't hire a new superintendent. Your utilities don't change. All those fixed things kind of stay constant. So we have to make adjustments. Also, we're talking about the impact on property taxes. There's state funding that comes into the school district. So we account for local share. What is the local share of education costs? We account for then that allocated expenditure, the incremental expenditure of what are those fixed costs that aren't changing based on enrollments going up or down. And then in this case, because you lost so many and your per pupil has gone so high, I had to do a calculation to kind of adjust your per pupil expenditure. That $31,000 really is not an accurate number because it's being inflated, as I already showed, by those lost enrollments. So what we come up with, which is a conservative number, is approximately $10,400 per new enrollment, which would equal in this development about $650,000 in costs related to those new enrollments. Next slide. We also did an evaluation of the proposed real estate, the commercial component, the residential components, and the hotel component. And these are based on numbers that we use. We take a look at the developer's numbers, and then we apply our own numbers from our experience. And my ultimate goal is not to provide a value of the development, but to provide what is an honest expectation for taxes that will be paid to the community. And in that, we come up with approximately 2.6 million in real estate taxes alone. Add into that then personal property taxes, other fees and so forth, and that's where we get the $3 million approximately in revenue. Based on my low number on the residential, you can probably inflate our numbers compared to where the projected development is right now. You can probably inflate our numbers by about 13-14%. So we then compare the revenues to the expenditures, and essentially the fiscal impact is projected at about $1.7 million per year net positive. Just so you know, that 2.6 million in real estate taxes, that's 8.5% of your total real estate taxes collected in the community. It's a significant portion. Some other things to consider. Some of our numbers are actually, I view them as very conservative, that the fiscal impacts will actually be more positive. So there's things like, for example, our estimates for the cost of local government in these numbers doesn't go department by department and pull everything apart. And for example, your public works budget is 5.4% of total property taxes, 13% of the town's total government budget. We're not adding any new roads. No infrastructure that we're adding is going to be maintained by the town. They're handling sewer and sewage and so forth on site. The fact is there would be a minimal impact to 13% of your town budget there, just public works alone. We're also asked to look at, well, what's the impact to other services? You know, for seniors, if we have an aging population and those kinds of services, the library and so forth. So we took a look at those, and one is with the robust amenities on site, everything from meeting spaces to the lagoon and so forth, and based on the demographic that we expect that would occupy these units, we're not talking 75-plus-year-olds, even though we are talking empty nesters in the 55 to maybe 70-year-old range, and then also young professionals in their 20s, 30s, and maybe into their 40s. Based on those demographics, based on the amenity packages, we see little to no impact on things like senior services or the library or visiting nurses. We also took a look at beaches, knowing that beaches are sacred here, right? You add what will be probably about 1,200 people occupying this site, new to the community, what's that impact? Living in a beach community, you're probably going to be surprised by this number, but only 41% of the population has been to a beach in the past year. I actually haven't been to a beach in 6 years. There's a reason why. No. So we took that as a starting point, looking at some tourism data and so forth, and ultimately made some assumptions around, well, there's quite a few people who've probably only been to a beach once in the past year in that number. But there's many people who go a handful of times. I have a relative that comes down here to the state beaches, you know, probably 5 times a summer. And then we know there's people that live on the beach. Actually, when I was young, I was on the beach every day. So we made some assumptions around those numbers, and it works out to, we estimate with the number of people in this development, with the amenities packages on the development, that it would probably be 17 visitations per day from this development to town beaches during the high season. The last thing I'd like to point out, job creation, construction jobs, 233. Permanent jobs on site, we're estimating at 304. That's based on retail space, but restaurants and hospitality space tend to run higher, so we think that number is conservative. And total discretionary spending from the new households, about $15 million in the community, actually about $16 million. Discretionary spending, and local consumer spending that would occur within the town on your main street and so forth, is probably about $4.7 million per year. And the tourism spending from the hotel would probably be about $5.5 million in total. That wouldn't just be localized to Westbrook, but around this kind of greater coastal area. So with that, I will say thank you and turn it back over to the team.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ed Casella. I'm an attorney in Old Saybrook, and I've been asked to just speak tonight about some of the processes associated with obtaining approvals from both the state of Connecticut and from town Westbrook and its local boards, and the timelines associated with that, just so you all have an understanding of what we have upcoming. So as mentioned several times, this process has actually been in the works for 2.5 years. We started in January of 22, meeting with town officials and getting the design going. The formal application process actually started with step 1, which was submitting the septic system to DEEP. Because the septic system is so large on the existing outlet property and for this proposed development, it's not regulated by the town's health department. It goes and gets regulated up through the DEEP up in Hartford. So that application was actually made in January and is ongoing and will continue to be ongoing as we go through the town process, which is just really kicking off. So from a town permitting perspective, we have a few steps. The first step is we have a pending application for text amendments to the zoning regulations that will be heard by the zoning commission. Much of this development is actually permitted under existing zoning, but there are a few regulations which we're seeking to revise, particularly as it relates to the zone that this property falls in, which is known as the TIC zone. It stands for Turnpike Interchange. And it was really a zone that was created when the outlets were developed back in the 1990s. So a lot of the changes that are being proposed won't impact projects in any other parts of the town. So the text amendment has 3 basic components. The first is we're seeking height increases for both the size of the building, number of stories, and for a hotel. Right now, you're allowed 4 stories, 50 feet in height, and we're seeking a 5th story up to 60 feet in height. And primarily, the driver of that is the septic system to accommodate a development of this size not only is expensive, but is very large. And when you have a large septic system, in order to make it work, the buildings need to be denser and a little bit higher. The second is similar. We're seeking a gross floor area increase from what's now allowed at 30% to what's being proposed at 40%. So again, it's a density increase to allow more floor area on this property as a whole. The final text amendment actually relates to parking for multifamily developments. There was actually a state law that passed a few years ago which mandated that towns cap the number of parking spaces per unit for multifamily developments. And our application is basically to bring the zoning regulations in line with what the state requires through its zoning legislation. So that's the first step, which is the text amendment through the zoning commission. If that's successful, we then move on to full kind of planned development. First step there would be to go to the Inland Wetlands Commission. Much of this site doesn't involve inland wetlands permitting. A lot of the inland wetlands permitting will be related to the septic system as it kind of expands out on not only the outlet parcel, but also some of the out parcels that you pass when you're driving into this property. So there will need to be an inland wetlands application, an inland wetlands process as it relates to the development. And then the next step is to go back to the zoning commission for what we call special exception and site plan, where we have to come up with full plans, architecturals, complete a full traffic study, show what the proposed uses are going to be, how they meet with they comply with the zoning regulations. This will be peer reviewed by consulting engineers, consulting traffic studies. It's a fairly substantive process. So that will then hopefully be the last local approval that's affiliated with this development. As those local approvals are going on, the DEP is continuing. The DEP takes a lot longer than the town does. That's why we start and give them a 6-month head start. So it's our expectation to try to get through local permitting by the beginning of 2025, rough timeline. And then once you get through local permitting, you can finalize your state permits. DEP septic system we talked about, and then the DOT, Department of Transportation governs sites that are of this size because they're deemed major traffic generators. As a major traffic generator, they want to make sure that the infrastructure associated not only on site, but the intersection with Essex Road, I-95, probably down to Route 1, is all compliant, and that the traffic that is generated by this property won't have any impacts on those roadways. So obviously, as part of the outlet development, those developers went through the same process and completed a substantial amount of upgrades, not only to Flat Rock Place, but also the intersection with Essex Road that you all are, I'm sure, are very familiar with. So that's an overview of the permitting steps that are upcoming. The hope is to have all the permitting done second quarter of 2025. Obviously, there's variables in there, but that's the estimated timeline. Since I'm at the end, they told me to be brief, so I told them I would. So that's it for me. Thank you.
So I know that's a lot to digest. We are going to open up to Q&A. I had a request from the news people. I'm going to move that microphone over to that aisle, not because I want to exclude you, but because everybody's right side face looks better on TV, evidently, so they want you over there. I'm going to move this one down to the floor so that it'll be easier to bring in the various people that might more intelligently answer questions than I. So if you give me like 30 seconds, we'll make those moves, and then we're happy to open it up to questions. It is now just about 10 of 8. If we can agree that if I hear repeat questions, I'm just going to kind of move it along. And if we can try and get ourselves out of here in an hour, does that work? We'll be here, and there'll be other opportunities at other times, but if we can try and keep it moving, I'd like to try and do that. Be respectful of everybody's time. So.
What I wanted to know, the first question was the pricing on the rental apartments. And also the pricing for the townhouses. Like what income levels are we looking at in pricing?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, and I'm going to give you sort of broad plus and minuses, because when you do a development like this, and you heard Ed say, we're hoping to get approvals by the second quarter of 2025, one of the big risks in our business is we're building into a market 3 years from now. So I can only guess based on what the rents look like today. Mm-hmm. Okay, so given our experience in owning old Saybrook, right next door, Saybrook Station, you would have rents ranging from just under $2,000. We are doing a much larger number of 3-bedroom apartments in this community than we would normally do because of where the community is located. And so we're balancing, so our 2s and 3s are a huge portion of the 600 units. It's unusual for a multifamily to do that. So those rents will be in the 1-bedrooms will be probably in the low 2,000s. The 2-bedrooms will start in the mid-2000s, go probably up to $3,200 depending on floor and size and all that. The 3-bedrooms, believe it or not, can push well into the 4,000s. The townhomes today, if you look at the average per square foot sale on the homes here, would probably push somewhere into the $650 on the low side and maybe closer to $900,000 for their townhome. Okay. Does that fully answer your question?
Yeah, that does answer my question.
Now, none of those numbers represent any of the affordable rents. Those would be a different set of numbers.
Well, you said affordable rents. I don't really see these as being affordable.
No, I'm saying there would be a component of those.
Rents. What percentage of your buildings, the project, are you planning to be affordable housing, if any?
That we know there definitely will be, and we're in negotiations with the town as to what the percentages and what levels the town would like to see. So we don't have that worked out just yet.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, we're here representing, I think, the smaller part of the pyramid. So 2 questions for you. One is, I love the Hometown Heroes incentive incentive. Similarly, have you guys thought about for kind of retail, restaurant, business side of it to incentivize local, small boutique businesses rather than, getting a lot of the conglomerate restaurants? But obviously, we have a small business actually, and would love that.
Yeah. Congratulations on the small business, God bless. So when this went public, our phones started ringing off the hook by various different restaurant operators, most of whom are shore-based, but not the Chipotles of the world, if you will. So we would not see that as a primary sort of restaurant operator. We would look for more boutique, more interesting restaurants than just big box stuff. So yeah, very, very much.
Second question I had was around, I love that you're incorporating community aspects to this. I think that is huge rather than it just being a housing development. So I was wondering if there was anything you did to look at, other areas, not just even in the Northeast, but maybe around the country who do it really, really well. A couple of places come to mind. I know like down in Florida, 30A has a really, they built a lifestyle there, right? And how they've developed that entire community. And so I was just curious if you guys have looked at kind of a breadth of things or.
Yeah. So while I'm now based in Connecticut, I used to work for a big S&P 500 real estate investment trust. So we owned at one point 260,000 apartment communities around, or units around the country, including a lot in the Southeast. And the Southeast has done a really good job of creating these mixed communities that balance off for sale, retail, multifamily, hotel, and create destinations. So my partner Eric has done a lot of that actually in Florida many years ago, although I know he looks like the lower end of the pyramid. He's been around for a while. So yeah, we have. There's a couple that immediately come to mind in Texas that are of a much bigger scale because it's Texas. But yeah, we have looked around. And one of the consistent pieces because we watch social media, I don't know, maybe it's 11 o'clock at night, I can't shut my brain down, but one of the consistent asks, if you will, was not to make this cookie cutter, right? To try and do something that's more interesting than that. So it's not just your typical New England clapboard development piece. So my instruction, and Christine will swear to it, is this needs to be interesting. And not every building has to look identical, and not every building has to be the same height to make it interesting. So we'll take lessons from our background and apply them, I hope, in the way that you're suggesting.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of tough questions from the crowd, but we appreciate you taking interest in our community.
Thank you.
Obviously, this site is a fantastic opportunity to create a village-type environment. I am an architect. I've worked with Jane Jacobs in the past and designed three four-story buildings in Greenwich Village, which was generated by the influence of Jane Jacobs on the town committees. The density that you have proposed is the density of a major urban city. It is in excess of the density of most of the cities in the United States. The highest density, of course, is Manhattan. Manhattan provides 14% of its area to parks. And you can reach a park within a 10-minute walk from most areas. Miami, being one of the second or third most dense cities in the United States, has only 7% of parkland, but still you can reach a park in 10 minutes. The most beautiful cities in the world, like Savannah, Georgia, or Paris, or Riga, Latvia, have parklands in abundance and way over the national average, which is 15%. So that's a big consideration of this, because this community is like an island. It is bordered by the train on the south, by I-95 on the north, no access on the east, and only a single access way to the west. In case that road is travelable, you're going to have 12,000 people isolated unless you get permits to enter from I-95, which I doubt you can, because I-95 exits are very, very difficult to change. The sewage treatment plant that you propose, you say would be privatized. And my concern is that should the developer ever go bankrupt and turn over the maintenance of this property to the town, the sewage treatment plant of this size is a couple of $1 million a year. It's considerable and would be a big burden and probably wipe out half or more than half of the taxes that are generated. Stormwater runoff, of course, you're going to deal with the inland wetlands on that, but your coverage right now on the property is close to 90%, so you're dealing with that now. Your traffic is going to be less traffic with your development than it is if this mall were 90% occupied. So traffic and stormwater are probably not an issue, but the density is quite an issue, and I'd really be concerned that the density should not exceed 8 units per acre, or maybe less, 6 to 8, which is a medians. Your demographics expert can probably answer that question of what the demographics of a nice village center is. So, but a city like Savannah, the density is 1,600 or 1,200 units per square mile, and at 15,000 people, that's people per square mile. And this is adding 15,300 people per square mile in the density of this thing. You're not adding that, you're only adding 1,200 people, but that's a density, a tremendous density. And you're going to build 6-story buildings with elevators, will not invite that many school children to these type of things. And those types of buildings were built in St. Louis, Stamford, Connecticut, and by famous architects that were torn down because they were dangerous. And Jane Jacobs' main theme was to keep an eye on the street. And none of the buildings that we built in the West Village had elevators. They were all walk-ups. So I would really be concerned that the density should be reduced considerably.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind to wrap it up a little.
Okay. Also the retail. To bring in retail into a village like this, the retail is satisfied by the Clinton Mall. And this should be neighborhood convenience shops and restaurants, maybe not any retail.
Retail, look, I'm going to answer a couple of things and not to be argumentative. The retail that we're proposing is mostly restaurants. So, we agree with a lot of what you said, but the density here is a way to create open space and deal with the park and open spaces that you're proposing. I don't know when the last time you were in Savannah is, but I was there 6 months ago, and the entire riverfront now is as dense as you're going to see in any major city anywhere. They've got the history of all that open space because of the beauty of Savannah, But all the new stuff in Savannah makes this look like it's tiny. I got one development in Savannah that would make this look small.
I spent an hour talking to the planner of the city of Savannah, and she told me that the historic district had a density of less than 12 units per acre.
Yeah, but you go south from there along the river.
Yeah,
yeah.
but that, we don't have that.
Right.
We like to have the atmosphere of this historic district.
It would be uneconomic here.
Good evening. I heard you speak to the impact of on the visiting nurses and the local other environment items like the library and such. But did you give the same issues to, say, the fire department and the emergency medical local items like that? Because that is definitely going to be impacted. I myself am a volunteer member of the ambulance. My grandfather was a volunteer member of the fire department. And those items are definitely going to be impacted by that number of residents moving in and the large number of buildings going up.
We've already had one meeting with the fire chiefs to discuss those issues, and I think everything that they raised, we can adequately address.
What about the fire? That's the fire, but what about the emergency? Like medical. The EMTs, the ambulance, say.
Okay, and then that I understand is here served by a semi-private ambulance company. Is that right?
Volunteer.
Okay. With the hospital on the entry to this project?
The hospital is right there, yes, but the Westbrook ambulance is completely volunteer.
Okay.
So, and how about encouraging volunteerism of anyone who works there, who comes to live there? We have very low, staffing because of this.
So one is the existing talks with police and fire have been positive that they can absorb it. We can take a further look into ambulance responses specifically. One of the key things I'd like to point out is, and this is across Connecticut, and I would assume it's the same in Westbrook, and from the population structure and so forth, one of the biggest challenges with volunteer fire and volunteer ambulance is actually finding volunteers within the community. And part of that is the contraction in the age of population that actually volunteers and does those things. So I would be hopeful in a large development that would be attracting a large 20 and 30 something demographic that would provide an opportunity for a greater volunteer pool within the community. So on that end, I don't think we're going to impact it. On response and calls, we can take a further look at that and see what the impacts would be.
And as you stated, though, that you stated they're going to be professionals. Are they going to want to volunteer?
You never know. Right. Understood. We'll look at it.
I have a question as to why so many units. You built 195 in Old Saybrook, you built 250 in West Hartford, and we're a small community, and you're basically saying we're going to have almost 700 new units. Why so many?
Well, again, not to be repetitive, but the sewer plant has to be so robust. It's going to cost a lot of money to do that, and you need a lot of units to amortize the cost of the sewer plant.
You built a sewer plant in Old Saybrook for 195 units.
Correct, but that was a dense piece of land, and that was all they could fit on that piece of land. It's not economic here to build a treatment plant and not have a large number of units over which to amortize the land.
And so what kind of individuals do you think are going to be coming into town?
Well, our SKU at Sabre Station is older. It's a lot of people that are in this audience, and then we do have a younger cohort there, but I would have to say that better than 50% of that population is over 65.
Okay. I just really think that the 700 units are way too many for the area you're putting in. Now, it's a separate issue.
My concern is, I've been here in Westbrook my whole life, and you mentioned it's an older demographic, and it's that way for a reason. A lot of people, I grew up here, and the friends I grew up with now bought houses here, and they enjoy the quiet community. If you're talking about getting mostly 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom houses, it's going to be more than 1,200 new people and residents in the town. And you have on your flyer, it says you're going to have a weekend shuttle to the beaches. Our beaches are shrinking all the time, and your numbers of having 17 people come to the beach is not. If you're coming to Westbrook and you're going to buy something in Westbrook or rent something for those prices, you're doing it because you want to be by the shoreline and you want to go to the beach. It's just something we all have a big passion for, and you're going to be destroying that by bringing in that many people and that kind of, like this gentleman said, the density that's going in. And from what I read, your plans are to put the buildings and apartments and condos in first, and then down the road maybe getting all the amenities and things. And so we don't even have a guarantee all those self-contained community features are going to go in. So I think there's going to be more than 65 new students going in. And I think there's going to be way more than 17 people a day going to our beaches. And I don't know about anybody else, but I like it being an older community and a quiet community. My grandkids come and they love the beach and they enjoy the beach. And I just hate to see it change like that. I don't want Westbrook to be a big city. When I tell people I live in Westbrook, they're like, where? And I'm like, great, I'm glad you don't live there. I don't know numbers in that because I don't think those statistics are accurate.
I want to thank you for the interesting presentation first. And just a couple of questions, I jotted them down and they're all over the place, so please bear with me. Just out of curiosity, how much have you spent on the project already? A lot.
And building that too, sorry, this is private enterprise, so it's really, it's a lot.
You can't give us that information.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so far as the effect on town services, police, fire, first responders, I guess, you know, I'm not an expert in the area like the gentleman over there is, but I would think that we would probably need to have additional police in town. Probably. Now, the fire department, which is all volunteer, again, you know, finding those people to help with the additional services will probably be a little bit of a concern. And I would think the town would need to purchase additional equipment. If we're going up 5 stories to possibly put out a fire, we're talking about, I don't know, a few $100,000 worth of new equipment to get up there. Also, I have a question. Can you tell me which businesses in town will benefit from that $16 million that we're going to seek coming into local in the town?
That would be local spending dispersed within the community.
Right.
It may be the pizza shop, it may be the, you know, whatever store. I can't say it's going to be X to this business or X to that business. But
Okay, I'm just not aware of that many businesses in town, but I may not know. Let's see. Has the Department of Transportation given approval for any changes that might need to be made?
We are not that far into the project.
Okay. Now, just in looking at your plan for the hotel, you indicated that you're trying to keep pollution down and keep the area quiet. And I'm wondering if it might be useful to move the hotel near the entrance so people won't have to drive down the entire front, middle of the community to get to the hotel. Just something to think about.
different thought, I see what you're saying. One thing that I wasn't necessarily prepared to speak to tonight, but it's come up twice now, is we are looking at creating an eastern exit from the property into Saybrook. So
So they could enter on that end also. Right. And based on the projections that were made, I'm wondering if the developer would agree that if any of the financial projections weren't quite right and the town were to need to spend additional funds, the developer would pay that amount.
Beyond the additional taxes?
I'm sorry?
Beyond the additional taxes?
Yes.
But by the way, he's very humble, but he has like crazy PhDs from university.
At the end of the day, I mean, even if I had done the math, so I said 63 new district, said 122 total. Even if I did the math on 122 total, the development is still more than 50% fiscally positive to the community. If you were to add 200 students, not 122, it would still come up fiscally positive. So I don't see any future that this development would require more services from the community than it will actually generate. Its taxes will be, conservatively, will be 8.5% of the total property taxes within the community. That's a huge number.
Right, then it should be easy for the developer to agree to pay any additional dollars.
So the net calculation that Don has put out is that the town will have an additional $1.7 million to do with whatever it wants to do above its current budget. We are in Westbrook, Connecticut. We are not in Washington, D.C., where a bunch of people throw money around that they don't have. Because we have to live in the real world where there's a limited supply of money. We don't get to print it. So the things that happen in these developments, I think, should give everybody comfort. The concern expressed about, like the treatment plant, there are all sorts of safeties and guidelines built around how we operate those and how we properly fund that and how we reserve for any issues that might come in the future with the plants. So there's a responsibility built into a lot of the things that I've heard expressed already that are monetary and that have big teeth. So I think the more we get into this, and I'm happy to take some of those questions offline with you because it gets very nerdy really quickly, is built into how we do things.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have additional discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How we doing? I've been in construction my whole life. So how many phases do you figure the project's going to be? Because in my experience, it starts out one way and then a lot of the phases get dropped. So you may not build the hotel, you may not do the front entrance, you may not do some of the retail as the project progresses. And I can give you examples like in Saybrook at Big Y, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff and it's just Big Y and a furniture store and a Starbucks. Yeah. That's it.
Right, I got it. So to answer your question, for financial reasons, we have broken it up into two phases. But once we build the plant, which we have to do first, we're pregnant. So we got no choice. The baby's coming. We gotta build this thing out. So the phasing is done simply so that I can convince and it will never stop. It'll just start and it'll just go. So the phases from a construction standpoint are just going to happen. The nice thing between having Hogan and Wallace and us as partners is we have the wherewithal and the experience to get that going. Because the worst thing, as you suggested, to a project is to get stuck halfway. Yeah.
Hi, I have more so just this has been my experience, a comment about the demographics. I work at Electric Boat in Groton, and they were trying to get about 14,000 jobs and have not been able to. You're talking about getting 300. If you look at the shoreline, there's help wanted everywhere. I'm just a little suspect of the 30, 40-year-olds that hopefully will rent the apartments. They shop online. They don't go to stores. They do their grocery shopping and gets delivered. Everything is about the internet. So I'm a little suspect about how much they'll spend in town. And then the population, the younger population, left Connecticut in general, not just Westbrook, but Connecticut. The jobs, where are they? They went south, they went to Texas. Yeah, we're one of the most expensive states to live in. That's why the population leaves. They can't afford to buy a house here. So the professionals come in, maybe. You know, you'll get them, but I'm not sure how much money they'll bring into the community.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned EV.
Yeah.
We look at a lot of stuff in and around EV. EV's got, you're right, they're asking for another 15,000 people.
Yes.
You can't move production of a nuclear power submarine to any other place.
Right.
So they have to figure it out. And we're actually working with New London to try and help them do that. The state of Connecticut, by all metrics, is 60,000 housing units short of being able to serve its population as it exists, not in terms of net growth. And I'm a relatively new resident of the state of Connecticut. I've operated around the state for 40 years, but I moved here 7, 8 years ago now with my family. And when I moved here, and I was going around, coming into a job, I had people consistently ask me, "You're moving to Connecticut on purpose?" Right? And I'm like, what am I walking into here? But having lived here for 8 years, I kick myself for not having moved here earlier. Because the quality of life here is irreparable. You can't replace it anywhere else. And I've lived in multiple places in the country, so I work for very large firms. It's a wonderful place to raise a family.
But you can afford it.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't trust me, I don't live here. When I moved here 8 years ago, long personal story, divorce, bankruptcy, the whole bit. So I could not afford to live in Westbrook. So we don't live in Westbrook right now. And my wife is very committed to making sure that our child goes to public school. Period, end of story. Private school is not an option for us, it's a political thing for her. So, and unfortunately, through Marty believing in me, I can afford private school now for my daughter. But we haven't moved communities. Okay? And I consistently said, and I say it to the politicians I meet, Connecticut has a little bit of a self-esteem problem. Right? It is a wonderful place to live, and we should all be trumpeting that because we lose our young people. They want to go, and they're moving to Boston, New York. It's not because it's expensive in Connecticut. Because if you're living in Boston, New York, you're paying a lot of money. Trust me, I've lived there. So,
These are the people I work with every day. And they're in apartments now, but once they get families, they're transferred out.
Yeah, but I was able, just anecdotally, I have a new CFO in my company 9 months in. He worked for a private equity firm in Manhattan, making a boatload of money. But he was born in Connecticut, wanted to come back and raise his family in Connecticut. We took a massive pay cut to come and work with us because he felt that this was where he wanted to raise his family. I think we as Connecticut have to do a much better job of explaining why it is that this is a great place to live. So,
I agree, but it is definitely finance. I can't go to the riggers or the painters and say, hey, you want to spend $3,000 a month?
I agree,
They can't afford it.
but if we don't solve the housing in the state by creating more housing, all we're doing I'm 61, all we're doing at this age is bringing up the drawbridge and not helping the next generation. That's what we're doing. And we've got to meet the market by creating more housing in order to level that off, or all it's going to do is get more and more expensive.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentations tonight. They're very helpful. Got a question. Don't tell me how much, but just my question is this. Are you negotiating an abatement for taxes with the town.
We will need to do that for sure.
Yes, does
Trying to get, particularly in the interest rate environment that we're in right now, it's very, very difficult to pencil one of these jobs out. But when we've done that, as you'll do research on us, we've done that in almost every community that we're in. We got the one and only tax abatement in West Hartford, but not by our good efforts. It was the sister that was selling it to us who went to the town and got it, because part of that project is a condominium building inside of our project that the sisters live in. They're 82 years old. They have an assisted living facility. They needed the money we were giving them in order for the sisters to end their lives with dignity. Again, having been sorry to get on bandwagon's getting late, but having been Catholic clergy for many years, what we did to the sisters as a church is criminal, because they're on their own. They don't get money from the archdiocese. They have to support themselves and all the good work that they do. So when sister went to the town and got the tax rate, we were able to do the job, and we were able to pay them enough money they could live the rest of their lives in dignity. So very, very proud of that effort. So
I certainly understand being proud about it, but my question is this: does normally tax payments are 5 to 8 years, 5 to 10 years? Have you taken that into consideration with the $3 million worth of taxes? Because you're saying that we're going to get $3 million worth of taxes minus the abatement, minus $1 million for each fire truck that we have to buy to go up to the 5th floor.
I've already spoken to the fire chief, and trust me, Eric and I have spoken, and we were willing to buy the fire truck. Okay? No, I thought we would have done it, and many communities have operated in, because we don't want to come in and burden the community, right? We want to be the partners. The fire chief said, we don't want another ladder. We have too many tight beach roads. The fire departments here on the shore all have cross agreements, and Saybrook's ladder gets them what they need. So by the time they would be setting up, Saybrook would already be there with their ladder, which is more than adequate for what we're proposing. So the fire chief said he didn't really need anything. There are other things that we can do to help allay some of the capital expenses of the fire department. We're happy to do that. We want to be good members of the community. So, but I'm not, whoever it was, I'm not agreeing to cover every extra town cost. But at the front end, we want to be good neighbors.
Well, I appreciate your flexibility on that, and I'm sure the town will too. But it's $3 million on the brochure, and we're not going to get $3 million.
Not day one.
Not day one, year 5 or year 8.
Yeah, but...
And I understand it's an investment, and I understand the whole process with that, but we're saying we're going to get $3 million, and we're not.
That's the potential of the taxes coming out, right, on a conservative basis, but yes, you're right.
Do you envision this to kind of be like a Blueback Square thing in West Hartford with all the retail and more apartments? I mean, they went into a certain area of West Hartford, you built in West Hartford, so you know. And they went into West Hartford and they created a whole new community. I mean, is that kind of what we're looking at here? Or?
Well, what's interesting to the site for us is the fact that it is bordered by 95 and by Amtrak, right? So it's not, in some of our communities, we're in close proximity to large multifamily or single-family homes. We're not here. So the creation of a community center that's away from the town center was attractive to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Susan Feaster, and I live in Essex for many years. I shopped at the outlet for many years when it was viable. It was a great outlet. I'm here for 2 reasons. Can you clarify? So Lexington is the builder, and Mr. Fazio is your company operating it? You'll be operating it once it's built?
We are owners.
You're the owners?
Yeah.
Okay. So who will be taking care of the daily operations of the facility?
We have a property manager who's doing that, and we have a team on site who's managing, talking to the tenant, making sure everything is right, being on site, because the property manager is based in New Jersey.
Okay, the reason I ask that is I also, other than the job I work by day, I also run a shoreline use advocacy group for the people who use shoreline use, and a lot of the people here might use it, they're right on the line, We're sorely funded from the state of Connecticut. We're only operating at 44%. I think with whatever level of development we have here, we'll have some people that ride Shoreline East. And I was wondering if you were operating it, would you be willing to have a shuttle bus that would go between this facility, possibly stop a few places on Main Street to help all the people who live in Westbrook, and bring them to the train station and kind of rotate that during the day?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
In fact, we worked on that in the past.
Because I know you own this piece of property. I know you know the governor has, over the past year, has repeatedly said that the shoreline is lacking in transit-oriented development. And this property would fall into that.
Yeah, sure.
So with this property, hand in hand with the governor, get more funding, there'd be more trains, and it would really work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll email you, I took your name down. No, thank you. Now, Mr. Riley, I do have a few questions for you as a developer. It has changed since I've been standing here. I really get impressed by these meetings because there's so many articulate and intelligent people in these shoreline towns. If you don't live here, you don't know what it's like. I've lived in Essex for 36 years. It's a certain lifestyle down here. I actually researched your company and went through your whole website and did a spreadsheet of all your properties, including the ones you're doing down south, which are really interesting. You're gonna, I think it's in Tennessee, you're gonna be doing the shipping containers type of housing or something?
No.
Much more affordable?
Yeah.
Because the price points of these, although the Saybrook Station is a beautiful facility, $2,700 for a one bedroom. I think for anyone in this area, someone getting out of college would never be able to afford that. And as a developer, and I really appreciate the Hometown Heroes, and I think your company does have a lot of heart. But as a developer, I would really like to see, I know there's a business aspect to it, but you really need to understand the town you're coming into. And if you really want to make a good impact, you will make the housing for that town.
Yeah.
Not to bring people from New York City who want to live here now and pay $4,000 for a 3-bedroom. Okay? That is not the demographic you're speaking to. And it was a great presentation that you did saying about the demographics and the schooling. It was almost like a soft scare tactic of sort. But then at the end, you said you're only going to bring 63 students in, and it wouldn't really do much. So I wasn't quite sure why all that was said. Also, is your company paying an assessment fee to the town for infrastructure upgrades? Like an assessment fee that some developers will pay to a town, or the town can levy that to a developer to help pay for some infrastructure for the town?
We haven't spoken to them.
You haven't spoken to them about that, okay. The last thing, I was also a former member of the Essex Zoning Board of Appeals. And when I hear of a developer wanting to come and speak about text amendments, that should raise hair on everyone's arms. Essex has a small...
Can we keep it to Westbrook, please?
Well, I'm giving, just like you gave examples of your other buildings, I'm giving you an example of what happened in Essex because I think that it is relevant to this. A lot of you probably know next to the steam train in Essex, there's a 3-story apartment building. Okay, a lot of people thought that wasn't befitting Essex, but it's actually a really nice facility and it fits in really lovely. 5 stories, 6 stories, I think that's, I would say most people here probably are thinking that's too big. What would happen if you didn't get the text amendments? How would that translate onto your project?
We would have to spread the project out further and reduce the open space.
Okay. Because you have to make a bigger, how about if you have more open space, and you keep saying it's not economic, and that translates into the profit, correct? That your company makes?
It translates into whether it's economic.
Right, whether you make enough profit when your cost versus expenses and what you end up coming out with on your profit for your business.
Correct.
Right, okay, I just wanted to, could you do it smaller to fit into the flavor of the town and still make a profit?
No.
Wow. So this is like a one and done.
This is what we can make happen in this type of community.
Right.
Anything less than what we're proposing gets to be uneconomic. You can't make money. And
You can make less.
we're-
I know about business, but you can make less.
We're capitalists. We have to attract capital to make this happen.
True.
It's extremely risky to do these projects.
I know it's altruistic, but I'm just asking a question, that's all. I mean, I think people agree that something has to happen, right? It's a nice piece of property, but I wish you good luck. I think some of the ideas you have are great. So thanks for the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Cohn. I've lived in this town for 44 years. I love Westbrook. It's a great town. All the people, you can't beat them. I bet you drive a nicer car than most of these people in this town. I bet you also live in a house that's much nicer than everybody in this town. Is this all your money that's going into this project?
I'm not sure I understand.
Is this all your money going into this project, or is there many other financial partners?
We have many other financial partners.
So we don't really know who the money is. Am I correct?
You know who the owner and the developer is.
No, we don't know whose money is funding this project. Am I correct? Simple answer, a yes or no.
We have to have a bank.
That's not a yes or no.
I'm not answering yes or no. Do you want to, this is going to deteriorate into that. We're going to finish the Q&A. I'm not here to be interrogated. I'll answer questions, but I will do it respectfully. And I expect you to do the same.
So you mentioned community access to this water feature area. Is this something that anybody in town or anybody in any other town is just going to be able to access and use at any time for no charge? Is that what your plan is?
That is our plan.
So anybody can go. Can you please outline the exact details of what your expectations are from the people of Westbrook into granting you tax abatement?
We don't have those numbers yet.
But you do expect the people of Westbrook to contribute to your development in regards to tax abatement?
We will need a tax abatement.
So we are all going to be partners on this, in a way?
That's one way to look at it.
Okay, that's all I really need. Thank you kindly.
You're welcome.
I say I was disappointed to hear that the management team that runs the outlets currently is going to be running this project.
That's Eric.
No, running the outlets when they're built. I think the outlets as they are standing have been mismanaged for years. I think they've made a lot of poor decisions. I don't think it's an economic reason why they're failing. I think it's because it's poor management. That's the first thing I'll say, because the Clinton outlet is thriving, and I think they've made a series of mistakes. And I met with the manager of the outlet center in 2019, had a 45-minute discussion with her, and I think it was a lot of bad decisions. The second thing I was going to say is, I think there will be an impact.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
What business are you doing?
What business am I doing?
Yes, please.
Well, this is the thing. I'm not going to here to talk about me. I'm going to talk about your project, okay?
No, I'm saying.
Well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, okay? You're looking at your vehicles, and I'm not going to argue. You said you're not going to make it personal, but the business is not successful.
For management.
Your business is not successful, and that's obvious.
Absolutely.
It's not because outlet centers don't work, because outlet centers in Clinton are doing great. It's the way this place is run. So I'm going to leave it at that and take it for what it's worth. The next thing I'm going to say is this promise of tax revenue, this is sort of the carrot that's always dangled over communities, and they see that and go, ooh, tax revenue. And I think there's a lot of bills that come with increased development, so I think people should realize that tax revenue is not always a benefit. You look at a town like Orange. When I drive through Orange, it makes me sick seeing how much development there is. There's no character left in that town. And I remember talking with a gentleman at Dunkin' Donuts, when we had the Dunkin' Donuts here, he said, you know what? I come from Westport, Connecticut, and he's like, Westport used to be like Westbrook. 40 years ago, it was like it is here today. And he's like, it's changed. And I know that's what's going to happen in this place, okay? The last thing I'm going to say is, when you have the project in East Lyme, the Costco project, that's a private project, and I'm sure it was sold to the community as a benefit to taxes. And a few years after the project, there was a massive reconstruction of all the exits on the highways. It has to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. which I feel is a taxpayer subsidy to corporations. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a similar project. It starts off with, yeah, we're going to make all this stuff. You're renting these places to people that are paying $3,000-$4,000 a month. And I think the long-term costs are going to be borne out by us. What happens if traffic projections are not like what you think? It becomes a nightmare down there and have to redo all the intersections. That's going to be either the town of Westbrook paying for it or us through our state taxes, and I don't think that's fair. That's all I have to say.
I have to say that the poor management, it hurts a little bit, because I have been involved for 7 years. I was surrounded by professionals. It's not me, the French guy, that is coming and managing and everything, making all the decisions. There was really good professionals. I was respectfully asking to this gentleman what kind of business he is, because I've been doing real estate in 6 countries for 30 years. I made some failures. I did some good things. I had all kind of experience, I would say. I will never state that I was always successful, but here it's unfair to say that it was mismanaged. It was greatly managed, because today, without a good management, you will have a dead property. Dead. With all what is coming with it. Security, bad developers. Because there are bad developers. You have good developers here. That's the choice that we are providing to you. Because I like the statement of the lady, something needs to happen. And hearing that it was bad management, this is the wrong way to see it. Thinking that you're going to have someone coming and tell you that it's simply you have to well manage. It's not going to happen. Comparing this outlet, the Westbrook Outlet Center to Clinton, it's not the same product. People that have shopped to Westbrook when you were staying here, and Clinton knows that this is not the same offering. You're not going to get in Westbrook the same type of tenant that you have in Clinton. It's not going to happen, even if you change the management. So, I understand that there is, I see the clapping, etc. We are developers. This is what we do. It's not the first time that we come in a community, in a location, and there are fears about the change. It's totally normal. You like what you have. Why changing? Here, it's not really the choice, because something needs to happen. Westbrook Center will not. Why? Because something is not going to reverse. Westbrook is not going to reverse. It's my opinion. I'm not giving lessons to retail owners. Everybody can have his own opinion. I respect that. I'm telling you what is my belief. And I've been doing shopping centers in the US for 20 years. So this is my analysis. And again, we have the full team of US companies, US advisors, brokers, lease agents that are well known. And it simply doesn't work anymore. Some of you have seen that in newspaper. Giving the example of Clinton, it's fine. But how many malls in US went bankrupt, empty? I know a lot of them, so you should know too. There are a lot, plenty. And the good thing that happen when you read this article is you see that when the developer comes to the community, he's offering something. Sometimes it's rejected, sometimes it's... But it's repositioned. This mall needs to be repositioned, because the worst that you can have in a community is dead properties. It's the worst. So, we offer a choice. We think this is the right one. It's 2 years of work, right? It's not perfect in some aspect. You would like to be less dense, less this, less that. Yes, sure. Right, that's totally understandable. I would do less. It's a big project. I would do less, but economically speaking, it doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. So
the numbers don't work here, then why are you proceeding?
no, we are perceiving this because we think this is a great thing. And me personally, not for the business, but I will be very proud to do this project. So,
ask this question. I'm sorry, please.
Good evening, thank you for the presentation. I got one simple question for you. The town of Westbrook and its people don't want this project. What's your next step?
I disagree with the statement.
There's no statement, it's if.
I'm sorry?
If the town of Westbrook and its people don't want it, what's your next step?
I get that, I understand that. I've been doing this for 40 years. The people that would support this are probably not in the room.
The real question is, what happens if you don't get deep approval for the sewage treatment plant?
Then it's a dead
Once you
project.
say
It's a dead project.
then you're moving forward.
Excuse me, stop it. He needs his question answered. We're getting off tangent. He needs to answer his question, please.
Well, the town so far has been very inviting.
I understand the town hall has, but this is the first time the public has been able to address this.
Yes.
So you've been talking with a select few people in certain positions. So saying the town approves this or has been supportive, you've only seen the viewpoint of a handful of people.
And that's the purpose of this meeting tonight, is to
Right.
get hear from the rest of the community.
So what we're really interested in knowing is if we don't want this as the town of Westbrook, what's your next step?
Then we have to make a decision, because it is private property, and we have a certain degree of what we can do by right.
All right, thank you.
Just a couple of quick questions. Just design oriented. I know I'm getting off the fun stuff, but the swimming in the front, I just was concerned with all the traffic coming in that way and potentially children and stuff at that area. Just had me concerned in that way, and I like the person's suggestion of maybe flipping the swimming area with maybe the hotel so that your guests to the hotel don't need to go through the whole neighborhood and tie up the traffic. Just one thought there. Also, parking seems limited with for the retail spaces. I couldn't tell very well from the image. So the word seems is doing a lot of work in that sentence, I recognize. But it seemed a little limited, and I didn't know if there was plans for other parking structures or anything like that to make that easier, especially since it seems like all the retail parking is on that main street, and worried about clogging up that road for people who are trying to get actually into their developments. I just didn't know if there was a plan for that. If you want to answer that, then I quickly too.
Yeah, there may be a need for additional parking in terms of a structured deck somewhere, but we leave it to the professionals to.
Okay, so that part's something. Thank you. And then also, again, just based on the design that I can see from the screen, the streets look narrow, and I just want to confirm that for emergency vehicles, they are certainly wide enough for ladder trucks and such. Yes. And then finally, I just want to clarify one other thing, that the reason that my daughter is 23 and lives in an apartment in Providence, so I know what the going rates are for apartments. And I just want to clarify that what I think I heard you say was that one of the reasons that the going rate for apartments is so high is that we don't have enough supply, and that just to address that issue, that as more supply come online, the expectation would be that that's what's going to bring the overall price points down for people, is when we start filling that supply void that you mentioned. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep. Oh my goodness, I thought we were done.
I have a comment to my fellow residents of Westbrook. We have an election coming up in 100 days. I say we push to get this on as a ballot initiative.
Yes.
Yeah, or no?
Yes.
And let the town decide if this is going. Perfect.
My question is kind of centered around someone who yelled out, what if you don't get deep approval, your tax amendments, things like that. Certainly having that many units on that property is going to produce a significant amount of affluent production. You mentioned your septic treatment plant. Is it a septic system or is it a plant where you clean it and that fluid goes back in a clean situation? Okay, so if it's a treatment plant and you can't get the DEP approval, you can't get your tax amendments, say that you said this project would be dead, what other options would be used in that space? Do you have any other contingency plans, non-residential things that you have considered in going in that space?
We have looked at other options, none of which are terribly attractive.
What were they?
Amazon warehouse.
What were they? Amazon warehouse.
No tenants.
I have a question, sort of part demographic. I've been in the town for 36 years, built a house. My taxes have gone from $2,400 to $11,000. And now I know why, because it's $31,000 per kid. How is that related to other towns in the area? And I'm actually disappointed this only brings in 65 kids. I'd like to see 200 more kids. Right? Second of all, concerned about the beaches. I'm retired. It's July 18th, 85 degrees. There were 15 people at West Beach. 15. So on July 4th, the beach is busy. If we brought in another 100 people from this to the beach, there wouldn't be an impact. So I think I'm happy you guys presented this to us as an initial first step, but I think we need an open mind to invest in this town, because I don't know if John Hall can speak to it, but what's the chance of us getting the septic system in the center of town and revitalizing Route 1? Right? What's the chance of doing that? So someone asked, well, what are people going to buy? Well, there's nothing to buy in the town except go and buy pizza and restaurants. Because people don't want to build businesses on Route 1. So the town is on a trajectory, demographically. If we keep losing school-age population, what does the school system look like? Can we afford it? Are we talking about regionalization, which half the people in this room were here 25 years ago and voted down regionalization? So I think we need an open mind to let this play out and hear the benefits to the town and really consider investing in the town, because I think, being a long-term resident, the trajectory is going the wrong way, the way we currently are.
I just want to address a couple things. Things you said are very true, and you made some great arguments there, and I agree with them. First and foremost, inflation increases taxes more than anything else. Change in lifestyles increase taxes. When I was a child, I played 3 sports. My sister was a cheerleader. If that was today, I would be playing 3 sports, and my sister would be playing 3 sports. What does that do to ball fields? What does that do to basketball courts, and so forth and so on? We demand more of government today than we actually did in the past. Number 2 is that inverted pyramid, right? You're small at the bottom, large at the top. I tried to joke about it a little bit earlier, but I'll be blunt. The top end of that dies off, and the bottom end is not being replenished. Why do businesses struggle on Main Street? Why do businesses not want to be here? There's not a critical mass of population. What this development does in part is add a critical mass that will bolster existing businesses in addition to the businesses in it. It removes a bunch of vacant retail that is failing and will never come back, and right sizes it to an amount of square footage that can be supported. So there are drastic benefits to this, and it does need to be considered. So thank you.
Another question, the septic and my question is, and a couple people mentioned this, what is the impact of creating such a large septic area treatment plant on the groundwater? I don't know about anybody else in Westbrook. I've heard of a few, but I have a lot. I'm struggling with groundwater. I'm on the other side of Boston Post Road, and it's significantly higher
this year and the year before than it's been in the past. So I'm wondering about the impact, the environmental impact.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any info on that?
We didn't bring those guys with us tonight, but we can do that. That has been extensively studied over the course of the last couple of years. We have wells all over the site. We've got deep looking over everything. All those calculations are designed to address the concerns that you're bringing up. So whatever we do, we're going to do very responsibly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I wish we had more opportunity as a public unit that we could speak more. I am very concerned about the size of this facility. We are talking 595 units plus 100 condominiums, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well, according to the population that you've given us, the statistics, you're talking about 1,300 people.
Approximately.
Yeah, well, I come up with about 3,034 people if you have all those units filled to capacity. Because we are talking about 30 studios. You are planning one person in a studio apartment. Well, married couple can live in a studio apartment and they can have their first child still in a studio apartment. You're talking about 291 bedrooms. That's another couple, and that's another child. 306 two bedrooms. You're talking about married couple and up to 4 children or more in that second bedroom. I think you're not thinking about how people who can't afford housing, when they pay for housing, they stack and pack people into the facilities that they have. So we are talking about possibly an extension of 1,744 kids that could possibly have an impact on our school system. When you talk about the bedroom space and you talk about people moving into 695 units. I have seen in the course of my life towns that have been very small towns that have brought in apartment complexes to this size or larger, and the impact that it has had on the whole demographic of the town. From the way the town looks at each other anymore, you have now added, you've lost that small community. You've lost that sleepy town feeling. Most of us are here because we love the sleepy town facility. We're going to lose that. So I'm very concerned about the size of this unit, and I think your numbers that you're giving us are very, very low to what could be the possibility. The other thing I'm concerned about is your sewer system. If in fact these numbers, these units get filled to their capacity, is your sewer system going to handle that many more people?
There's very tried and true ways of calculating all those things that actually in the real world end up being really close to how the engineering groups work it all out. So we're very confident that what we're proposing is not only responsible, but it is in excess capacity of what we think is going to actually happen.
I mean, really, like the max capacity as opposed to just in excess of your 1,300 people that you're thinking of. When I'm thinking of it 3 times more than that.
Over the course of my career of 40 years, I have run probably close to 200,000 apartments all across this country, and never once, including Manhattan, have I ever gotten peak density the types of what you're talking about.
Well, I've seen it numerous times. I've seen it at the town of East Hartford. I've seen it in Manchester, Connecticut. I've also seen it now currently happening in South Windsor, Connecticut, where units have come in and they have proposed so many persons per unit, and it's far exceeded that number. And the impact that it's had on the educational system, the police system, the fire departments, and our poor EMTs, not to mention our medical facilities, and we don't even have a grocery store in our own town. So that's all I have to say. But thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
department does not need any fire trucks, does not need a ladder. We have 3 relatively new engines. We have 100-foot Seagraves tower ladder. And if you know anything about fire trucks, Seagraves is one of the top of the line. So I just wanted to end this one on a positive note. I appreciate all the work that you've done for this presentation to rehabilitate this piece of property and bring tax revenue to Westbrook. So thank you.
Thank you. It's 9 o'clock. If we can agree to stand in place. Have a wonderful night. Safe trip home.